Wow. You really sent us down a rabbit hole this time with this audio.
Yeah.
It's making some pretty serious accusations about Obama, Trump, and even international surveillance during the 2016 election.
Right.
Where do we even begin with this?
Well, I think you've stumbled upon the kind of claim that tends to circulate in certain online circles.
Right.
It's our job to help you make sense of it all,
Okay.
break down what's being said, understand the context,
Mhm.
and give you the tools to navigate this information.
Right, because we're not here to tell you what to think,
Exactly.
just to give you the information to think for yourself.
Exactly.
So let's get into it. This audio source is alleging that Obama used British intelligence to spy on Trump during the 2016 election,
Okay.
somehow sidestepping legal restrictions on domestic surveillance.
It's a bold claim,
There.
and one that is tied to a broader narrative that has been pushed by some who believe that Obama was actively trying to undermine Trump's candidacy and presidency.
And to really get a feel for this, we actually have a clip from this audio source.
Okay.
The speaker calls himself the voice of reason. And let me tell you, he does not hold back.
Oh,
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, but first I've got to ask, what do you make of the tone and the language being used here?
right.
It feels very pointed, even aggressive.
You're picking up on something really important. The language is incredibly emotionally charged words like
Yeah.
tool him, sedition, bloody revolution.
Right.
They are intended to evoke a visceral reaction from the listener. It's a classic fear-mongering tactic
Yep.
designed to bypass rational thought and tap into those deep-seated fears and anxieties.
And it's interesting because those fears, especially around government overreach, are not entirely unfounded. We've seen real examples of this even recently with the Snowden revelations about the NSA.
Exactly, and that's what makes this kind of rhetoric so potent.
Right.
It exploits legitimate concerns and twists them to fit a particular narrative. By invoking Snowden, the source is trying to lend credibility to his claims, suggesting that this alleged wiretapping is just another example of a pattern of government abuse.
It's like he's saying, see, it happened before, so it could definitely happen again.
Exactly.
But the key difference here is that unlike with the Snowden leaks, there's no concrete evidence to support these claims about Obama and British intelligence.
That's a critical point. Despite these allegations circulating for some time, no credible evidence has ever emerged to corroborate them.
He also name drops Judge Napolitano, who I vaguely remember being involved in this wiretap story a while back.
Oh,
Can you remind us about that?
yes. Judge Napolitano, a legal analyst who was a frequent commentator on Fox News, publicly claimed that British intelligence had been involved in surveilling Trump, citing unnamed sources.
Okay.
However, no evidence was ever provided to support these claims, and Fox News eventually distanced themselves from Napolitano's statements.
So we're seeing a pattern here. A claim is made, it gets
Yeah.
amplified, but no real evidence is ever presented.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what the goal is here.
Well, one possible goal is to sow distrust in institutions. If you can convince people that the government, the media, and intelligence agencies are all corrupt and working against them, then they'll be more likely to turn to alternative sources of information sources that might confirm their existing beliefs.
And that's where the real danger lies, right?
Exactly.
When people are only exposed to information that reinforces their pre-existing biases, they can become trapped in echo chambers where dissenting views are dismissed and critical thinking is stifled.
Precisely. It's a phenomenon we see playing out in various spheres today. These echo chambers can create a distorted reality where conspiracy theories flourish and evidence-based arguments are ignored.
And this source seems very aware of that. He even encourages his listeners to share this information with others, framing it as a duty to spread the truth. He even suggests that Obama is continuing to operate behind the scenes, using his post-presidency activities as proof of an ongoing plot against Trump.
That's another interesting tactic at play here, by suggesting that Obama is still pulling the strings he's feeding into this narrative of a deep state, a shadowy network of powerful individuals working to undermine Trump and his supporters.
It's a very compelling story, especially for those who are already predisposed to distrust the government.
Right.
But we have to remember that there are often more straightforward explanations for things.
Sure.
Obama might just be choosing to remain engaged in civic life or staying in Washington for personal reasons.
Of course, there are always alternative explanations.
Right.
But those explanations might not be as exciting or as validating to someone who already believes in a grand conspiracy.
Right.
The deep state narrative provides a simple explanation for complex events, and for some, that simplicity can be very appealing.
So what we're seeing here is a deliberate attempt to shape a narrative using emotionally charged language, unsubstantiated claims,
Hmm.
and appeals to fear and distrust.
Absolutely.
It's a potent cocktail, especially in a world where information spreads so rapidly and uncritically online.
And it highlights the importance of media literacy and critical thinking skills.
Right.
We all need to be more aware of these tactics and be able to spot them when they're being used.
So how do we do that? How do we become more discerning consumers of information?
Well, that's a great question, and one we should definitely explore further.
We'll delve into that when we come back after a quick break.
Sounds good. It's
Yeah.
like being a detective, isn't it? We're
Yeah.
sifting through the clues,
Right.
trying to understand not just what's being said, but why
Right.
and to whom.
Exactly. We've got this audio clip with the voice of reason making these claims about Obama and British intelligence using really strong language and painting this dramatic picture.
Right.
But if we take a step back and analyze the structure of his argument, we can start to see how it's designed to be persuasive, especially to a certain audience.
He starts by setting the stage, establishing this sense of outrage and injustice.
Okay.
He uses rhetorical questions like, who talks like that?
Yeah.
To imply that anyone who denies his claims is naive or foolish.
Right.
And then he strategically weaves in these references to things like the Snowden leaks and Judge Napolitano's statements, even though those situations were very different and ultimately lacked evidence.
It's almost like he's creating a web of associations linking his claims to real events to make them seem more credible,
Exactly.
even if those connections are tenuous at best.
Right, and this is where understanding the concept of confirmation bias becomes really important.
Okay.
People tend to seek out and interpret information in a way that confirms their existing beliefs.
Right.
So if someone already believes that the deep state is working against Trump, they're much more likely to accept these claims about Obama and British intelligence without questioning them too closely.
It's like those claims slot right into a pre-existing narrative, reinforcing that worldview and making it even more difficult to challenge.
And the use of emotionally charged language plays a key role in this process.
Okay.
When we're feeling strong emotions like fear or anger, our critical thinking abilities can be impaired. We're more likely to make snap judgments and less likely to consider alternative perspectives.
This audio source is clearly playing on those emotions he talks about. Sedition and bloody revolution, painting this picture of a dire threat to the country.
Right.
Those words evoke strong emotional responses, and that can make people more receptive to his message, even if it's based on flimsy evidence.
It's also interesting to consider the audience he's speaking to.
Yeah.
He's clearly appealing to people who are already skeptical of the government and the media.
Right.
People who feel like they've been ignored or betrayed by the establishment.
He positions himself as this lone voice of truth, bravely speaking out against a corrupt system.
Right.
That can be a very appealing message, especially for those who feel disenfranchised or marginalized.
It taps into a sense of powerlessness that many people feel, regardless of their political affiliation. There's a perception that the system is rigged, that those in power are untouchable, and that ordinary citizens have no real influence.
And in that context, a figure like the voice of reason, who claims to have access to secret information and is willing to expose the truth, can seem like a beacon of hope, a source of empowerment.
It's important to remember that this is a pattern that we see repeated throughout history. Demagogues and propagandists have always exploited people's fears and anxieties,
Right.
using emotionally charged language and unsubstantiated claims to gain power and influence.
And in today's world, with the rise of social media and the constant bombardment of information,
Right.
it's even easier for these kinds of narratives to spread and gain traction.
The internet has in many ways become a breeding ground for misinformation and conspiracy theories.
Right.
Information spreads so quickly, and it's often difficult to distinguish between what's true and what's false.
And this audio clip is a perfect example of how misinformation can be packaged in a way that makes it seem very convincing.
Right.
The source uses a combination of half-truths, misleading statements, and outright fabrications to create compelling narrative that reinforces the beliefs of his target audience.
He also employs several classic propaganda techniques, such as appealing to emotion, using loaded language, and creating a false dichotomy between us and them.
He even tries to preemptively dismiss any criticism by claiming that he has long paper trails and documents to support his claims. But as we've discussed, he never actually provides any concrete evidence.
It's a classic tactic used by those who want to spread misinformation without being held accountable. It allows them to make sensational claims without having to back them up with facts.
And even if he were to provide sources, it's important to remember that not all sources are created equal.
Right.
We need to be critical of where information comes from and what the motivations of the source might be.
Exactly.
This source, for instance, openly admits that he's a Trump supporter and wants Trump to succeed.
That doesn't necessarily invalidate his claims,
Right.
but it's crucial to be aware of that potential bias when evaluating his information.
Like with anything else in life, we need to apply critical thinking skills when we're consuming information, especially online. We can't just blindly accept everything we see and hear.
Exactly. We need to be skeptical, ask
Mhm.
questions, and do our own research, and be wary of sources that are trying to manipulate us emotionally or play on our biases.
This audio source, while claiming to be a champion of truth, is actually engaging in a very deliberate form of manipulation.
Right.
He's crafting a narrative that, while lacking evidence, is designed to resonate with a specific audience and further their agenda.
And it's a reminder that we need to be constantly vigilant in the face of misinformation.
Right.
We all have a responsibility to be informed, discerning consumers of information, and to hold those who spread falsehoods accountable.
So what can our listeners do to protect themselves from being manipulated by this kind of rhetoric? What are some practical steps they can take to become more media literate?
Well, that's a great question, and one we'll explore in more detail when we return.
It feels like we're living in this age of information overload,
It really is.
where everyone has a platform and anyone can claim to be an expert. It's hard to know who to trust or where to even begin when it comes to sorting fact from fiction.
Yeah, it's a valid feeling. It's like drinking from a fire hose of information.
Right.
A lot of it is contaminated, but that's precisely why we need to equip ourselves with the tools to filter that information and make sense of it all.
So let's get practical. What are some things our listeners can do to become more media literate and avoid falling prey to these kinds of manipulative tactics?
Well, I think it all starts with being aware of your own biases.
Okay.
We all have them, and it's important to acknowledge how they might be shaping our perceptions. Ask yourself, what are my preconceived notions about this topic? Am I predisposed to believe or disbelieve certain information?
And once we've acknowledged those biases, how do we move past them to get a clearer picture of what's really going on?
Well, I would say diversify your information sources.
Okay.
Don't just rely on one news outlet or social media feed. Seek out information from a variety of perspectives, including those you might not initially agree with.
So if you typically get your news from a left-leaning source, make an effort to read or listen to a right-leaning perspective and vice versa.
Exactly.
Challenge yourself to engage with viewpoints that might make you uncomfortable.
Exactly. And be wary of sources that present information in a way that's designed to elicit a strong emotional response.
Right.
As we've discussed, strong emotions can cloud our judgment and make us less critical.
This audio clip is a prime example of that, using inflammatory language and fear-mongering tactics to stir up anger and anxiety.
If you encounter information that's presented in a highly emotional or sensationalized way, take a step back and ask yourself, why might the source be using these tactics? What are they trying to achieve?
And don't forget to fact check.
Yes.
If something sounds too good to be true or too outrageous to believe it probably is, there are some great fact-checking websites out there like Snopes and PolitiFact that can help you separate truth from fiction.
And don't just take those fact-checking sites at their word. Either look at their methodology, understand how they arrive at their conclusions, think critically about the information they are presenting.
It's also important to remember that even reputable sources can make mistakes. So if you see something that doesn't seem quite right, do some digging, look for corroborating evidence from other sources.
Yeah, developing a healthy skepticism is crucial. Don't blindly accept everything you read or hear, even if it comes from a source you typically trust.
And when you're sharing information online, be mindful of the potential consequences sharing misinformation, even if you believe it to be true, can have real-world implications.
Think of yourself as a curator of information.
Okay.
Before you share something, ask yourself, is this information accurate? Is it coming from a reliable source? Does it contribute to a constructive dialogue, or is it likely to sow division and distrust?
And remember, if you come across something online that you know to be false, you can always report it to the platform or engage with the person who shared it and provide them with accurate information.
Yeah, it's all about fostering a culture of accountability and promoting a more informed public discourse. We all have a role to play in combating misinformation.
So to sum it all up, becoming a more discerning consumer of information requires being aware of our own biases, diversifying our sources, checking facts, thinking critically, and being mindful of what we share online. It's an ongoing process, but it's essential for navigating the complex information landscape we live in.
And remember, this audio clip is just one example of how misinformation can be used to manipulate and mislead. It's a reminder to be vigilant, to ask questions, and to think for ourselves.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this has equipped you with the tools and knowledge to navigate the world of information with a more critical eye. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay informed.